Can I start by congratulating Nick Clark, who stood down as Provincial Almoner after 5 years in March, after a fantastic job as Provincial Almoner, and welcome Gary as his successor. Gary was his deputy for many years. He knows exactly how and why Nick did what Nick did, and I'm sure with the support of the team that he's got around him, he will have a fantastic tenure as Provincial Almoner. It's going to be a hard act to follow Nick, but I know that Gary is equal to that task, particularly with your continued support. Thank you also, brethren, to you and your lodges for the support that the lodges and individuals in it made to the Provincial Almoners COVID-19 appeal. It was launched at the beginning of the first lockdown, and over the last year, it's received 159 donations, which has enabled it to make 374 grants totaling almost £72,000 to brethren who suddenly found themselves unable to earn an income because they've been made redundant and for other similar reasons. I'm the almoner of 2 of my lodges, a role I didn't take on until I was already the deputy, and I didn't realise, I have to admit, just how much is involved and just how important the role is. One of the things I actually enjoy now, because I've realised just how much the widows get from it, is regular phone calls to the widows to keep up to date with them, and calls to brethren, the older brethren that haven't been able to get to meetings from time to time, because they really appreciate it. And I've come to realise just how important the almoner's task is, and how important a conference like this is to empower you to do what you do for us. Bear in mind that the Almoners team, it's one of the strongest teams we've got in the province. And bear in mind that if you have any questions at any time, if you're dealing with a case and you're not sure what assistance is available to you, you can always phone the team and they will give you the advice that you need. One of the things that they will be doing during the year is arranging coffee mornings at Stysted and at Hamilton Court. These are 2 homes that we have in Essex that are currently being underused by Essex Freemasons and their families. They are fantastic facilities, and I do hope when those days are arranged that you take the opportunity to attend, because you'll see for yourself and you'll be in a position to actually recommend to brethren in your lodge who would benefit from moving to those homes, or whose family would benefit from moving to those homes. Unless you've seen it, you can't really speak with authority about how good they are. And the facilities, I hadn't been for a couple of years to Hamilton Court. Those I was at last week. It's fantastic, the changes that they've made there. So please do support them. Brethren, as I say, yours is one of the key roles in the lodge. This conference has been designed to help you do that job. And please, stay until the end, and if you have questions, please ask them. Thank you very much indeed for attending. I look forward to the rest of this conference.
Thank you very much, Robert Paul, for that very warm welcome to the event. And just to let you know, everyone, some of the details that Paul just went to, we'll cover back over again. But essentially, it's fair to say it's not the full day we originally planned to provide for you at Saxon Hall. But we hope that this shorter and historic virtual presentation will be helpful to you all. On behalf of the team, thank you all for attending, and we hope you will all learn something from the various presentations we have lined up for you. And just as importantly, you will be able to share this with your members. I should now sort of formally introduce myself to you as your new Provincial Grand Almoner. And I hope that my name at least is familiar to many of you. As Paul mentioned, I've been on the team now for almost 7 years, and the last 5 of those as deputy to the Provincial Grand Almoner. And I'm confident in saying that these years have given me the insight into our current working processes. And I'm very pleased to retain the support of that current team, who all work so hard in this busy but rewarding job that they do to help you complete your duties. There's been many changes in both the Lodge and Chapter Almoners since the last conference, which was back in 2018. And those, together with the PGA team having undergone a makeover, I'd just like to bring you up to date with these changes. Late 2020, Nick, our former PGA, and I had looked at the structure of the team to see if the way we were set up was still fit for purpose with the impact of the COVID pandemic. And we very quickly agreed that changes within the team were necessary to reflect the way our work processes had already been impacted by changes in the MCF working processes before COVID actually struck, and the subsequent changes they were then forced to adopt with COVID. We made these changes to the team roles and responsibilities and changed the job titles, both of which are now more appropriate to the work we do. These changes should be appropriate for many years to come. The most important change to you as our almoners is that your deputy group almoner, who's the person who emails you regularly with your newsletters and other updates as your go-to contact in the team, is now known as your Almoner Liaison Officer. And you'll be pleased to hear the work is continually supporting you hasn't changed, as you will hear in a later presentation from Ray Heathfield. We've also reduced the number of the ALOs, as we like to call them, from 10 to 7. So some almoners are now receiving their communications from a different ALO. We also created an ALO specifically responsible for Stystead and Hamilton Court. And that's in the capable hands of John Hardesty. And he will be working hard with them to start making them more exposure through the almoners. These changes have all been in place since last November, and the rest of the team consists of 9 Almoner grants officers, a social welfare officer, which is Gary Nielsen, Chris, who you've already met now, is our communications officer, and we have a men's health officer, which is George Young. You'll be receiving presentations during this from Ray and from Paul Cash on their work within the team. Hopefully, you'll see the recent communications, which announced Ray is now deputy to the PGA and John Mansfield is our finance officer. Both will continue these roles as well as their duties as Almoner liaison officers. And I'm sure you'll be joining me in wishing them well in these appointments. As with many teams, changes do occur with time, and along with a change of PGA, 2 of our more experienced members have now left the team, namely Bill Bangs and Jerry Wilmore, both who have worked tirelessly in their respective roles within the team, and we're sorry to lose them. Fortunately, I've been able to recruit replacements, and I welcome both Paul Hacker and Stuart Topley to the team as Almoner grants officers. The team structure is available to you on our communication channels, which is linked within the Almoner section of Second Rising, the Almoner's newsletters, the Cube and Facebook. Now, if any of you are interested in joining the team, please contact me or any other team member, and we'll be happy to explain the work we do in much more detail. And if you're still interested, I can add you to the waiting list as vacancies become available. To you as almoners, you can continue to do a great job within your lodges and chapters. And many of the new joiners are keen to get up and running. Many of you have done really proud for yourselves of the work that's come your way during this long pandemic. On behalf of the province, as well as the team, please accept my grateful thanks for that. I'm sure that every one of us on this call has been impacted some way by the pandemic, perhaps too many of us personally. And so many of you have continued making those regular contacts with your widows and brethren, making sure that they're all managing as well as they can in these difficult times. As many of you will know, of the changes we are promoting with the support of the province is lodges recognising the role of a deputy almoner and selecting a member to this role. And I'm pleased to welcome those of you here on this call today. As a team, we have sometimes believed deputy almoners have a vital role to play in assisting the almoner in the well-being of our members. And COVID has probably made us realise even more just how valuable that deputy can be in supporting the almoner in his ongoing work, keep in contact with your widows and members. If your lodge has not yet considered the idea of a deputy almoner, I would encourage you to do so, and also to consider that the person is selected is the man to succeed the almoner when he's ready to step down, as the handover should be much easier on many levels. I would ask, if you do have a deputy, that you do share the workload with him so that he can gain that vital experience that will help him to take over from you in the future. Please just do remember to make sure he is aware of the confidentiality of the work he is doing in assisting you. I must remind you that this is a role and not an office, and there's no collar and jewel. Having a deputy will actually mirror the Provincial Grand Almoners team. I'm a provincial officer and have a collar and jewel, but the 19 team members who help me are not officers, and I can't do my work without them. It would be a success for us to be able to visit lodges and see and also hear from deputy almoners in their meetings. The deputy, it's not deemed necessary for our chapters, and will therefore leave chapters decide individually if they want to do this. I'd just like to speak a little bit about funding for the Essex Provincial Almoners Fund. I'm sure that many of you know about our funding, but there are also those on the call who probably don't. So we have two financial resources. We have the Essex Provincial Almoners Fund and the Masonic Charitable Foundation. The Essex Provincial Almoners Fund, or EPAF as is more commonly known, this is our own fund, which is made up of donations from the province together with the lodges, chapters and private members. Thank you for all those who make these donations, and do please ask your members to consider us when your lodges and chapters agree their donations each year. This fund is generally used for two areas of support. Firstly, to bring immediate relief for small emergency payments, such as a boiler repair when a person can't afford it. And secondly, to look after the province's unattached widows. The EPAF, we made 132 of these immediate relief payments, totaling just over 28,000 since last April. And we sent 54 Christmas payments to unattached widows last December to the value of 2,160. But this particular fund has had a more important use this year, and Paul touched on it earlier, and this was the call to action campaign, which I'd just like to tell you a little bit more about. The call to action campaign has been a real success, and we introduced this last year to assist our brethren who were impacted by COVID and struggling financially, as the lockdowns and loss of work in so many cases had massive impacts on their family finances and their lives. We have been making and continue to make small fixed amount grants based on the household size to impacted Masons and widows to help them. These are reviewed every 3 to 4 weeks by the team member who raised that first request. We allowed 2 payments without asking too many questions, and on the third, told them to contact the Masonic Charitable Foundation, or MCF as we refer to it, to seek their more long-term financial support, as well as for any guidance the MCF could give them in benefit entitlements, particularly as the government were introducing so many changes in these areas. This campaign could not have worked without the support of the Province, and their funding to date of £30,000, together with a further £16,000 raised by the Provincial Just Giving page set up for the cause. These donations were complemented with other donations from lodges, chapters, and individual Masons. To date, as Paul's already mentioned, we have received 159 donations totaling £77,500, and we've made 374 grants totaling £72,000. I'm pleased to report that we've only needed to make 43 grants so far this year, which indicates these hardships must be improving. And many of those brethren and their families are getting back to some normality with their lives. It's been humbling for me as a person making these payments to hear some of the thank yous and the difference these small sums of money have made to them. And all the donations received in the post have been acknowledged by the Provincial Grand Almoner. As a team, we have been very proud to provide this vital service. And this success would not have been achieved without your help and support when the Almoner Liaison officers contacted you, asking you to make your brethren and widows aware of this funding. And as you have now heard from the numbers of grants made, the evidence is there that you did what we asked and did not disappoint. This actual campaign has also actually been recognised by United Grand Lodge of England. For a small number of those who were very involved in the campaign, received a letter signed by the Grand Master, accompanied by a certificate of commendation to recognise their efforts supporting our brethren during the pandemic. That's the Essex Provincial Almoners Fund, and just need to give you some more details around the MCF funding. So the MCF does provide us with financial support for much larger sums of money, and usually for more long-term support, providing the applicant meets their eligibility criteria, which is to have a Masonic connection and then checking your household incomes and savings against qualified outgoings. They provide grants which are separated into three broad categories. Firstly, financial grants where a distress has occurred, which has impacted the household incomes on a more long-term basis. Secondly, medical grants. These are for both treatment and mobility needs, for example, surgery or stair lifts or even wet room installations. And thirdly, family grants, which is actually intended for children and grandchildren, and these are focused around full-time education costs. For example, a laptop to do their schoolwork, funding for school uniforms, and extracurriculum activities. For example, if they belong to the school football club and they have, say, violin lessons, and these are after school time and chargeable. Applications for these grants are usually handled by our team of grants officers. But since the first lockdown, these have been handled purely by the MCF staff. Our grants officers are now processing these applications again, but by telephone interview, as we're not allowed to visit their homes right now. Now, the MCF are currently planning to allow us to resume home visits to complete these applications from the 21st of June, when we go into stage 4 on the government pathway, and hopefully all restrictions are lifted. Now, as you may have expected, the MCF grant processing times have been severely impacted by the pandemic, and they're only just starting to get back on track now that they are allowing the provinces to complete these telephone applications. The MCF have relied on up to 400 Masons across the province, across all the provinces, acting as grants officers. And until the changes last year, we in Essex had 10 helping working with this particular work. Despite this, for the 12 months up to the 31st of March 2021, Essex still received 225 grants totaling £497,000, making us the 4th highest ranking province, excluding the Met for awards. For comparison, in the previous year, we received 239 grants totaling 549,000. Year on year, Essex are always in the top 5 province for grants awarded by the MCF. So that just tells you just how important we are in that situation. For the majority of these applications, the usual processing time for these is 8 to 10 weeks. So if we ignore the delays caused by COVID, this is a lengthy process. And you could really help if you're able to pick up on any signs or changes in your members, which might suggest they're struggling, and encourage them to contact one of the team or the MCF directly. From an almoner's perspective, please don't forget that the MCF provide many other vital support functions to us all, such as benefit advice, counselling services, payment of private consultations where there is a long NHS wait. All this advice is provided free of charge, and a simple phone call to the MCF can take away a lot of worry. And don't forget, all of the team will be happy to help with these inquiries in that first instance. I'd just like to touch on loneliness. Loneliness is still a significant issue for all of us, and we can all help by maintaining contact with our members and widows. Hopefully, we will soon back to our meetings, and it will be easy to stop contacting some of those who have been calling over last year. Shortly, Paul Cash will be talking to you on behalf of our Social Welfare Officer, Gary Nielsen, about our successful adoption project for our unattached widows, which by getting so many of these ladies adopted by your lodges and chapters means they should now be enjoying the better pastoral care that you are now giving them. And this should help reduce their loneliness. With COVID, we could not have gone through a period in our lifetimes when contact with our brethren and widows has not been more important. And while I know we are fast approaching more and more restrictions being lifted, please don't stop the contact you are making. And please do think about making contacts with your widowers and single men. They too may not have had much contact with others over this last year and may be feeling lonely. So a call could be so gratefully received. If we stay on track with the government's pathway dates, lodge meetings will start resuming in a couple of weeks. And if you haven't already considered doing this, can I just ask you, if you start thinking about contacting your brethren in the weeks leading up to your meetings, to check not just that they are well, but they also intend to be at the next meeting. There is a concern that as so many of us have not been to a meeting for more than a year, it could be so easy for some of these to feel they've not actually missed their meetings and may need that little bit of encouragement to attend. Perhaps they might need a lift to the meeting these days and are just too proud to ask. Just remember that these could be signs of starting to lose a member, when a simple call and a kind gesture can overcome that. Remember to use your deputy if you already have one. Otherwise, consider a telephone tree or a buddy system where you can call on other members and sign 4 or 5 of the brethren to each of them so that they can make the call and report back to you. Finally, on loneliness, let me remind you of some of the following facts that we have communicated to you all before, but in these unusual times are probably worthy of repeating, just to keep us all focused. 200,000 older people have not had a conversation with friends and family for a month. A lonely person is 2 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. 38% of people with dementia said they had lost friends after their diagnosis. 50% of all people aged 75 and over live alone. For 3.6 million people aged 65 and over, TV is their main form of company. Lonely people have a risk factor for early death, which is comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. All these facts, brethren, are from well-respected charities across the UK. And sadly, there are so many others if you search the internet. Brethren, that completes my update today, and I'll be happy to take any questions that you have posted in the chat room. Thank you for listening, and it's now my great pleasure to invite Ray Heathfield to give a presentation.
Good morning, brethren. For those of you who don't know me, I am Ray Heathfield, and as mentioned, I am the Deputy to the PGA and also an Almoner Liaison Officer, looking after the Masonic Centres in Braintree, Brightlingsea, Clacton, Colchester, Frinton, Halstead, Harwich, Manningtree, Saffron Walden, St Osyth, Stansted, Tolsbury, West Mersey and Witham, probably one of the smaller areas in Essex. Fortunately, and I think not by coincidence, we have three quite different groups of people in place, and they all have an equally important role to play. These important roles are the Lodge Almoner and his deputy. They are there to provide the pastoral care needed by his members and widows, this being at the very heart of every almoner's work. Pastoral care is making contact and listening to others, not on social media, but in person. It's about trying to prevent a person from becoming lonely. The almoner's grant officer is there to undertake the grant making and the administration for claimants and to liaise with the Masonic Charitable Foundation. This requires a large amount of training and experience, and all of the PGA's team receive this training each year. The Almoner Liaison Officer is there to help provide support within the lodges and the chapters, acting as a link with those lodge and chapter almoners, mentoring them and encouraging them to encourage attendance to those all-important activities such as men's health programs, widows' lunches, social outings and fundraising. Your Almoner Liaison Officer will also be your first point of contact for assistance. Please do make that initial contact if you have any concerns or questions regarding any almoner-related issues, as he will know the grants officer to contact after liaising with the Provincial Grand Almoner. As an almoner, you will be aware that your Almoner Liaison Officer will email or post newsletters and other information to you on a regular basis, and it is essential that you too pass this information on to your lodge members. We often have second-hand mobility equipment made available from brethren who no longer require this, and the ALO will email you with the description, and it will be allocated on a first-come, first-served basis. So if you do see an email about any equipment and you have a member or a widow who will benefit from it, please reply as soon as possible to avoid being disappointed. As with all positions within the almoners team, an effective liaison officer will be essential in communicating to almoners and guiding them through any difficulties they may have. This will include keeping in contact with all lodge and chapter almoners by email or telephone, and remembering to send paper copies of newsletters and other literature to almoners who do not have the email facility. Maintain confidentiality at all times and be aware of the General Data Protection Act. Mentoring newly appointed almoners and even some long-standing almoners. And giving general advice. If the Almoner Liaison Officer doesn't know the answer to your question, he will be able to find someone who does. I would also like to direct you to the Masonic Charitable Foundation website, where you will find an Almoner resources page with a large amount of very useful information for you. It contains information such as the Almoner's Guide, a social isolation toolkit, leaflets and fact sheets, all available to download. I'm sure you'll find these extremely helpful. It is the intention that Almoner Liaison Office build up a positive relationship with the almoners within their zone to be able to help them in any way he can. To achieve this, your ALO would be happy to be invited to your lodge or chapter, where he will be more than happy to update your members with important information on what is happening regarding the role of the almoner and the work of the Masonic Charitable Foundation. You will be aware, I'm sure, of the Adopt a Widow scheme in Essex. If not, you will be very soon. While we continue to retain the province's unattached widows, the ALO will support the social welfare officer by keeping in contact with those widows within his geographical zone, answering their questions and attending to any concerns they may have. Within the team, we have also started talking about how we can assist widows as well. For the almoner's work, we have divided Essex into 6 areas or zones, and each is headed by an ALO. You should, I hope, all be aware of your own ALO. Our seventh ALO, as Gary stated earlier, concentrates on building and keeping a good relationship with Prince Edward, Duke of Kent Court at Stystead, and also Hamilton Court in Southwood and Ferrers, one of the Masonic Housing Association properties. The Provincial Grand Almoner will, from time to time, need to recruit new people to the team. And he made mention of a reserve list that he holds. Should you be interested in becoming an Almoner Liaison Officer when a vacancy occurs, there are a number of qualities you would need to carry out this role. You will need to be computer literate and have an email address. You will need to be able to communicate with the Almoners, send welcome letters to any new Almoners, and build a good relationship with each one. You'll be able to attend team meetings 4 to 6 times a year, which have always been at a Masonic centre within Essex and in the evenings. Although obviously over the last year, we've been using the Zoom meetings. You should have a few years of experience with Masonry and will probably be a past master looking to give something back to Essex Masonry. The PGA will also ask if you have any work-related skills you can bring to the team. As a Provincial Almoners team, we understand that all lodges are private and we can only make suggestions. But as Gary has already said, we do recommend a Deputy Almoner to be appointed in who can stand in for the Almoner when required and perhaps share delivering the Almoner's report at meetings. Your Almoner Liaison Officer will need to be made aware if you do have a deputy, and he can add this to his email database and email or telephone him when issuing information from Province, the MCF, or any other relevant information. If the lodge or chapter Almoner has difficulties passing the information on to your members, for instance, he may not be computer literate, the Deputy Almoner could take this on as part of his duties. It will, of course, ensure continuity of office, as it would be hoped that the Deputy Almoner would naturally take up the office of Almoner at some point. You have probably heard me mention communication several times already. This is such an important part of the Almoner Liaison Officer's duty that we will look at it a little bit more. Effective communication is about more than just exchanging information. It's about understanding the emotion and intentions behind the information. As well as being able to clearly convey a message, the Almoner Liaison Officer needs to listen in a way that gains the full meaning of what's being said and makes the other person feel heard and understood. Effective communication sounds like it should be instinctive, but all too often when we try to communicate with others, something goes astray. We say one thing, the other person hears something else, and misunderstandings, frustration, and even conflicts can ensue. This can cause problems in your Masonic relationship. For many of us, communicating more clearly and effectively requires learning a few important skills. Whether you're trying to improve communication with your lodge members, lodge widows, or even your family, learning these skills can deepen your connections to others, build greater trust and respect, improve teamwork, problem solving, and your overall social and environmental health. We do, of course, thank all lodge and chapters for their very generous... Oh, have I missed a page out somewhere? No. We do, of course, thank all lodges and chapters for their very generous donations made to the COVID-19 fund, which were made at that very difficult time. As a last general thought, I would like to thank you for your hard work, and here are some simple things that you can do to help us carry out the role of the ALO to the benefit of us all. Let your ALO know if you have any changes to your own details. Let your ALO know if your lodge is appointing a deputy and his contact details. Let us know if you're stepping down and also who your replacement will be. Communicate the information you receive from your ALO to your brethren and, of course, your widows where appropriate. And so I finish by reminding you that we are all one team with the same objectives. We are all working towards the same goal, which is to care for our brothers, friends, widows and families. The closer we work together, the more we can achieve. Thank you. And back to Gary.
We're now going to hand over to the Stysted team. But before that, what we're going to do first of all is we're going to run a video which they have prepared for us. And then when we do hand over to Aggie and to Jade, I just ask you please, just remember they are at work, they're in a care home, and you might hear some buzzers going off. There's no need to panic, this is quite normal, and they have a team around them who will deal with that as they're attending to the buzzers going off. So if I can ask Chris to run the video, please.
When I first applied for the job here and I came for my first interview, I thought, wow, this is the place I would like to work.
Person-centred care is at the heart of everything that we do here at Prince Edward Duke of Kent Court. We support residents to live safely with us whilst empowering them to make decisions and respecting those decisions that they make.
I'm Patricia May. In November I will be 88. The staff are marvellous. You've only got to say I would like and it's there.
We provide very special service to our residents and we always go this extra mile to make sure that the residents, they have what they really want. We want to create a wish list for residents and fulfill those wishes, no matter how big or small they are.
So the activities here at Prince Edward are very varied. So we do have grand, extravagant things such as our safari shuttle, but we also understand the importance of other activities that residents who may not wish to come outside with us get involved in. And so whether that's just a game of bingo or cozying up in our bar, which turns into a cinema in the evening, all sorts really at Prince Edward.
We are very proud of our food service and we always strive to achieve more. The nicest thing about the home is people who live here, our residents, but also staff. Our staff is highly skilled, dedicated, well-trained, but also they pay attention to these little details which matter to everyone. And they know our residents really well, and they know what to do to make every day for each of them very special.
Hand on heart, I would put one of my relatives into this care home. I think Prince Edward Duke of Kent Court is an incredibly special place to live and to work. I feel very blessed to work here and it makes a wonderful home.
Reverend, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Aggie MacDonald and James Gibson from Stysted for their presentation.
Good morning, and my name is Agnieszka MacDonald and I am the home manager of Prince Edward Duke of Kent Court. I would like to take this opportunity to say big thank you to organizers for inviting us to the conference. so that we can tell you about our amazing home and how to apply for a place and available financial options for placement in RMBI homes. Just over a year ago, I entered the home as a new manager, and I never looked back since. On my first day of arriving to Prince Edward, I knew this home was completely different to any other home I ever worked before. Prince Edward provides tailored care to each individual needs, along with unique activities to support our residents' health and well-being. Coming to the care home can be a very daunting experience. Therefore, here at Prince Edward, we are promoting to our residents so that our residents continue their life to the full and enjoy the time with us in secure, happy, caring, and loving environment. Chris, can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. I hope that after watching our short video, you notice that our residents are at the heart of everything we do. We want to make sure that from the very first moment of arriving to Prince Edward, we provide comfortable home-from-home transition. During pandemic, we had to overcome many challenges, but we always made sure that our residents had the opportunities to participate in many activities in safe and as much as possible COVID-free environment. From cocktail evenings in the home's bar, to cinema, and visiting the surrounding woodlands in our safari cars, there is always something to support our residents' different interests and needs. During the pandemic and beyond that, we are always trying to be creative and innovative to ensure that our residents are part of the home life. It is in the end their home. Our slide presentation shows a very few examples of our activities and entertainments. And for example, in recent months, we converted our library to multifunction room, which includes Styset Crown pub, cinema, and where our residents can enjoy many activities. We organize the pub fish and chips lunches, or our residents can just sit there and simply have a glass of wine or pint of beer in the evening. Chris, can I have a next slide, please? With support of our Friends Association and Miles Trust Fund, we are proud owners of 2 golf buggies, and one of them has been converted to accommodate wheelchair on board. So we can enable all residents to have a little trips around our grounds. We have around 50 acres of gardens and woodlands surrounding the home. And in our golf buggies, we can accommodate frequent trips around Braintree Golf Course and visit Styset Village. Residents from the village very often pop out from their homes when they see us on our golf buggy and just give us the wave from the distance. On the warm days, we can go for a picnic by the river. And in recent months as well, in our woodlands, we were able to create our own Styset Safari Park, where we had a few banners with the animals. And also we purchased, with the support of Friends Association, 10 life-size animals made from fiberglass. We are in process of locating them in our woodlands. Recently, one of our residents, a gentleman resident, asked to organize golf buggy racing track. Well, I'm not sure how our golfers will take this, but they might see us racing around the golf course in 2 golf buggies. Chris, can I have a next slide, please? I hope that you have seen from our presentation and slides that in everything we do, we take into consideration physical and mental abilities of our residents and make sure that all of our residents are able to participate in activities as much as they can and enjoy long, fulfilled life. In addition, we also offer one-to-one activities for residents who are less able or those who are on the journey with dementia and find difficult to participate in group entertainment. Our staff is highly skilled and provide outstanding quality of care to all of our residents. We have specialized dementia unit called Motion House with fully trained, enthusiastic staff who is able to deliver person-centered, dedicated care to the residents with dementia. Thank you for listening, and now Jade will continue our presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jade Gibson, and I've been lucky enough to work with the RMBI for the last 5 years as Business Relationship Manager. The most rewarding part of my role is to support residents and their families from initial inquiry to moving into our care at Prince Edward. This past year, as I'm sure you're aware, has been a very challenging one for each and every one of us. But our aim and absolute #1 priority at all times has been to keep our residents as safe as possible, whilst promoting their well-being and providing extra emotional support when families have been unable to do so. I can confirm that as a home, we are now completely COVID-free and have been for quite some time, and we test our staff and residents regularly to ensure our wonderful residents and hard-working staff are kept safe at all times. In the summer of 2020, we created a safe visiting space at Prince Edward, pictured here, which has allowed residents to spend invaluable quality time with their loved ones in a COVID-safe environment, and this has been a huge success. As of March 2021, we've also been able to open our doors to 2 nominated internal visitors per resident, and to see residents be able to hold hands with their loved ones for the first time in over a year certainly brought tears to many of our eyes. The RMBI as an organisation has worked around the clock to keep our residents safe and at the heart of every decision that has been made. And as a home, we are incredibly thankful for their unbelievable support and guidance throughout a very tough year from a wonderful senior leadership team. Next slide, please, Chris. We have, however, tried to be as proactive as possible during the last year and have used this opportunity to start on a wonderful refurbishment project to transform our bedrooms to tranquil, unique and special places to live. Here are just a few examples of our recently refurbished bedrooms, which are all very individual, beautiful spaces. All of our bedrooms come with a toilet and a hand basin in an ensuite, with a small number of rooms also having a shower or a bath in addition. All of our bedrooms come fully furnished, and we do currently have a number of refurbished rooms available for new inquiries. Next slide, please, Chris. So how much will it cost to stay at Prince Edward? There are a number of different types of funding, which I will discuss in due course. Prior to a resident moving into our care, we would need to conduct an assessment with either the resident or a loved one who is able to give us a good indication of the level of care support that they will require. We care for residents at Prince Edward who need minimal care support, but equally we care for residents who are palliative and receiving end-of-life care, and everybody in between. We are also able to offer respite care at Prince Edward for a short stay with us. Many residents do like to come to us for a period of respite before making a decision about a permanent move. We can offer respite care for as little as a long weekend or as long as a number of months. So the care fees typically relate to care need. So care fees will be confirmed upon assessment. However, fees do start at approximately £995 per week. We are also currently running a couple of offers, which include 3 weeks of respite for the price of 2. And for permanent residents, we are offering 4 weeks for the price of 3 for the first 3 months. We would also look at couples applying to the home on a case-by-case basis and discuss any offers that we may be able to make. Next slide, please, Chris. So in terms of how the funding works. So typically, if a resident has over £23,250 in assets, which is a figure dictated by the government, they typically will be expected to self-fund and therefore pay the full weekly fee. Included in the £23,250 threshold would be any assets relating to the individual, including property. One of the main exceptions to this would be if a spouse jointly owning the property still lives in the property. And in this situation, the value of the property would be disregarded. With regards to married couples, the threshold for social services funding of £23,250 is per person in that couple. So for example, if Mr. Smith has £50,000 in a bank account under his name, and Mrs. Smith has £5,000 in a bank account under her name, Mr. Smith over the threshold would self-fund, and Mrs. Smith under the threshold would be funded by social services. Any money in a bank account jointly owned by the couple would be considered half belonging to Mr. Smith and half belonging to Mrs. Smith. If a resident has below £23,250 in assets, then typically social services would part fund the placement. An assessment would take place by social services before admission, and they would agree to fund. Currently, social services fund a gross figure per week of approximately £600. The difference between that figure of £600 and the full weekly fee, for example, £1,000, is subsidised by the RMBI as a charity. As a result, we would no longer receive any funding from the individual for their care costs. However, it's worth noting that the local authority will complete their own financial assessments and may assess that the individual can make a contribution towards their costs that they pay us. So for example, £100 per week. Next slide, please, Chris. So if a resident wishes to move into our care and has below £23,250 in assets, but that they have a property that they intend to sell, they are able to enter into something called a deferred payment agreement with the RMBI. This means that the resident would pay a reduced fee that they could afford from their income whilst the property is sold. And the difference between the reduced fee and the full weekly fee would accrue as an outstanding balance, which we would need to be paid upon completion of the property sale. There is interest chargeable after 6 months. However, our solicitor would provide draft documents relating to the deferred payment agreement before anything was entered into for these details to be confirmed. Next slide, please, Chris. So what happens when your money runs out? So what happens to those self-funding that then reach that threshold of £23,250? Social services would then come into the home to complete an assessment. Once the assessments are complete, social services will agree to fund from the date that the resident's capital fell below that threshold of £23,250. At this time, any monies paid past this date to the RMBI would be refunded to you. If an individual is accepted into our home, the charitable top-up is always provided if their funds reach the local authority threshold. And that really importantly means that as long as we are able to meet an individual's care needs, we are a home for life, regardless of depletion of funds. Next slide, please, Chris. So how to apply to us? If you have any inquiries at all, or you think we may be able to support you or a family member or friend, please just give us a call or drop myself or Aggie an email. I'm more than happy to support with any inquiries for care support, be it respite or permanent care, and we do currently have availability. So please don't hesitate to pick up the phone, even if it's just to talk about questions that you may have for the future. Please also feel free to visit our website where you can request a brochure, or to visit carehome.co.uk where relatives are able to leave reviews about our home. We are also now able to offer personalised show round tours for any inquiries. So if this is of interest to you, please just give me a call and we can get this booked in for you. In terms of timeframes for admission, we are able to admit a resident into our care in as little as a number of days. The key things that we require for an admission to take place is for an application form to be completed, our assessment to be completed, and for the funding to be confirmed. The application form can be processed and assessment arranged in a very short window. However, I would advise for any residents who may be funded by social services to contact their relevant local authority as early as possible to discuss plans with their social worker, as this is the only real stage which can occasionally hold up an admission. Next slide, please, Chris. So here are our contact details. Aggie and I would absolutely love to hear from you and love to be able to support you or any friends, family, any members of your lodges at all as much as possible. So please just give us a call. Please note, we also have a very active Facebook page. So if you are on Facebook, please search Prince Edward, Duke of Kent Court and request to join our closed group. Adding a note that you are from a lodge, we will be able to accept you into the group. Our Facebook page has been a wonderful tool in keeping in touch with the wider Masonic community and with relatives over the past year. Next slide, please, Chris. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and we really hope that you enjoyed our presentation and would love to hear any questions that you may have.
Jade and Aggie, thank you very, very much for that very informative presentation.
Thank you.
And John, are there any questions?
Yes, just one at the moment, please. Would the resident retain their state pension?
Absolutely. So if they were self-funding, any income that they have in terms of pensions, also attendance allowance, anything like that would be retained. If they were to be funded by social services would look at their income. They would have to leave them with a certain portion of their income, but they may means test that some of their income, including some of their pension, could potentially go towards their costs, but that wouldn't come to us, if that, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. One other now, are pets permitted?
Yes, however, we will have to do assessment with regards if the pet is suitable for a home and for a number of residents. But at present, we do have 2 cats living with us, 2 guinea pigs, and 2 badges. So we are friends, pets friendly home. Yes.
No tigers.
A fiberglass tiger.
Yes, and a lion.
Okay.
That's all I have. That's all I have at the moment, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you very much, Aggie and Jade. We are all on mute. Otherwise, everybody on the call, I'm sure, would really give you a lovely warm applause. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you so very much.
Okay, we will now invite Paul Cash to give the next presentation.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. Good afternoon. Okay, let me introduce myself first. I'm Paul Cash. I'm one of the Almoner group officers within the Almoners team, and I'm also Almoner of my own lodge, Albury Lodge, which meets at Upminster. So today I'm just going to give you a presentation on the Essex Adopt the Widow scheme. Just to give you some background to start with, back in early 2020, we had 123 widows on our list. Those were made up of 98 which were based in Essex and 25 that were based elsewhere in the country where widows had moved away from the area. So those widows were ones that were not attached to a lodge. The lodge their husbands had been members of had obviously closed, and so basically they were looked after by the Almoners team. And it was very time consuming for one individual to try and keep regular contact with all of them. And so it became very, which was really what you wanted to be socially beneficial for the individual widow. The outcome was that many widows were becoming isolated, lonely, and some were distressed. Unfortunately, the widows list was also growing as we had lodges closing and the distress on the widows was becoming greater all the time. The Provincial Grand Almoner would write to the widows in the summer and in the winter and send out a letter, a Christmas card, and then a cheque or a back payment to them. Christmas lunches were arranged at the local Masonic halls for those that could attend, and this was paid for by the Provincial Almoners Fund. This was well received, but we were not alleviating the loneliness ongoing through the year. We talked about what we should do, and we tried to organise local tea parties and events. The response was not good from the widows and lacked any involvement from many almoners. So we decided it was not good enough and change had to be made. So the first step that we took, we decided to recruit a person into the team dedicated to this task and would be called the Social Welfare Officer. We interviewed several candidates and found the perfect Mason for the job. He was not in the team at that stage, and his name is worshipful brother Gary Nielsen. He spent 3 months working with the PGA, discussing his role and how he should be carried out to tackle the loneliness and social isolation, and also to offer friendship and companionship and a helping hand. There was recognition that the new action needed to be taken to address issues which could positively encourage people to reconnect with others and to participate in events and activities. So step one, we implemented a buddy scheme, which was with the Provincial Almoners, where each one were allocated 5 or 6 of the widows, and really the idea would be that we would regularly phone those widows just to check that they were doing okay. This worked reasonably well, but it was clearly never going to be a long-term solution, and it wasn't going to help the widows that really needed more assistance. So step two, we established a new goal for the widows to have regular contact with a lodge and to feel that they still belonged to the Masonic fraternity. This was considered to be vital, especially in time of need, as well as getting friendly advice once in a while if required. The opportunity to mix with like-minded acquaintances was also thought to be beneficial. So we looked to see where all the widows lived, both in and out of the province, and we decided that we would ask the lodges near to where they lived if they would consider adopting a widow and treating them as one of their own widows. This way, they would get the care and attention they needed. We first targeted lodges in our own province, and the PGA and the Social Welfare Officer wrote to each secretary and explained the concept of adopting a widow. We also promoted the scheme in the provincial newsletters and the bulletins, which were well received. If a lodge agreed to adopt, they would take on the full responsibility of that widow, treating them exactly the same as their existing widows, with social events, Christmas outings, Christmas gifts. If the gift cost was too much for the new lodge to cover, then the Essex Provincial Almoners Fund would actually still pay for that Christmas gift. We then wrote to the PGAs in the other provinces where we had 25 widows living, and we explained the concept to those areas, and that was also well received. So the outcome, as I say, we had 123 widows. Of those, 98 were within Essex and 25 were outside. Since then, a total of 99 have been adopted, or there has been some that have passed away in that time frame as well. So that means that we've basically got 24 widows that are unattached at the moment. 6 of those don't want to be adopted, and 4 are in care homes. So we have 14 unattached widows. So at the moment, we are delighted with the outcome so far and for the support we have received both in and outside of Essex from lodges. The reaction from the widows has been very positive, and we believe that a key success has been to Gary Nielsen, who actually led this project. As I said, for the future, currently we have 14 unattached widows. However, we know there are a number of lodges that will be able to return their warrant when we start getting back to Masonic business. So that figure will actually grow. So we can now focus on more frequent contact with those few, but obviously that's going to be more widows added to that list, as I say, within the coming year. So, however, with those lodges unfortunately closing and the list being added, there is a stronger help for help within the lodges within Essex again. So, if you have any more help, assistance that you would like to give to any of those widows, then you can contact Gary direct, and I know that his details will be attached with the presentation today. Okay, and just to tell my own personal use of this, I have 6 widows in my lodge, and we have actually adopted one, and I just include her in my regular phone calls, and hopefully when we can meet up again, I will go and see her. And in fact, the lady that we did adopt was one that I'd actually met a couple of times beforehand when we went to the Christmas luncheons at the South End Masonic Centre. Okay, thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Paul. As Paul said, it's another achievement that we've made as a team with your help, and we are very, very proud of it. And we just need to keep on top of it, as Paul said, because as lodges do start to hand in their warrant, we will pick them up. Are there any questions, John?
Nothing at the moment.
Okay, we'll move on to what's effectively our last presentation for today, and that's on men's health. So I'd just like to bring you up to date on a few areas that George Young looks after for us. Firstly, on prostate cancer, you're probably all aware that prostate cancer is a major killer for us men. Statistics in England alone are as follows. 1 in 8 men will get prostate cancer. 40,000 are diagnosed annually. 9,000 die annually. But the good news is there are 325,000 are living with and after prostate cancer. If you check the Prostate Cancer UK website, there's a post up there that tells us that since March 2020, urgent referrals by GPs in England have dropped by around 52,000. That's quite a high number. And hopefully, as you all know, in our attempts to help our brethren, we've been running prostate testing events since 2017. These events have definitely helped save lives by the early diagnosis. And I would encourage all men aged 40 to 80 to attend these events to get themselves checked out with what's just a quick and painless PSA blood test taken from your finger. George, as our men's health officer, he's currently planning a men's health day. At the moment, it's the 27th of October, and the costs and details are all still to be agreed, and we will obviously keep you updated on that. Another piece of work that George is working on that I hope will prove interesting for us all, he's organising a list of speakers from specific medical charities who will be happy to come and attend our meetings and give a short talk on their work. He's broken this down into phases, and the first phase, George is contacting currently speakers who will represent Mind, Diabetes UK, British Heart Foundation, Blesma, Parkinson's, and Eventure. And what we'll do when we get their details, we'll organise some nice little sort of A5 size fact sheets, which will have the charity's name and the guest speaker's name and contact details. Now, if this is going to be of interest, we'd like to think that you would do the customary thing of offering a donation to their charities if they come along and speak at your meetings. Again, we'll keep you up to date on this so that you're fully aware of what's going on. The only other area of men's health that I'd just like to mention is that assisting George on the men's health is another team member, Alan Jory, and he's currently taking the lead on looking at a package for Essex Masons and their families to consider joining what a company called Benenden Health, which is a private medical scheme, and some of you on the call may already be members, but what's really good in that sense is that it's a fixed monthly charge where neither age or medical history increases that cost. And it's something akin to Bupa, not quite as immense in what it offers, but it's significantly cheaper. And what it does provide is immediate access to their GPs and some minor operations when we cannot get our own GP or NHS surgery timescales are deemed excessive for specifically defined routines. This is sort of still at its infant stage, and Alan is currently working with Tony White, one of our APGMs, who will be talking to the executive at the May board meeting for approval for Tony to proceed into negotiations with Benenden Health. And again, we'll keep you informed on this particular programme too. That's the end of our presentations, and I doubt if there'll be any questions arising already on that particular item, John.
There aren't any questions, but just one observation. I won't name the person, but the message I've had reads, may I urge everyone to suggest to the brethren of all of their lodges that they should accept the tests. My cancer was discovered in 2015 at Southend, and I'm very pleased to still be with you. I think that's obviously a testament to the fact that it works.
Absolutely. And yeah, there's a number of us on the call. There's the evidence there for you, brethren. And as I say, please do just look after your health. It's so important.
And sorry, Gary, one other observation has just come through. A private prostate test will be charged at about £80. So it's also 80. So okay. It's also much cheaper to do it through us. Clearly.
Yeah, because our current price when we run this prostate testing is £20 per person. So yeah, that means that it obviously offers good value for money. And you can have them free with your GP. You have to be over a certain age. And I understand GPs are reluctant to do it because it actually puts a cost on their surgery, which they don't really want to do it. But you know, we have these lovely civilized events in our Masonic halls, and you know, it would just be good to see so many more people just signing up when they become available. But yeah, so that's effectively bringing today's event to a close. And so I just hope you've learned something. And as this is being recorded, we will make it available on a number of channels. And I'm sure there are some items you'll want to share with your members, and I would absolutely encourage you to do so. Hopefully the length of this presentation has been right, as many of us have been on many Zoom meetings in the last 12 months. And I hope that we've kept you interested for most of the time, and that we'll get a better understanding of this when we check for the results of a survey, which will be sent to you. And please do complete it when you receive it. And please just be honest. This is the first time we've had a virtual meeting. It could be something that we can do on a more regular basis to give you more regular updates. But really, we're looking to you as part of your feedback to let us know around that area. Very importantly, I really must say some thank you to people for today's event. Firstly, of course, our Deputy Provincial Grand Master in charge, we're very worshipful brother Paul Reeves for opening today's event. And also, Paul has supported the PGA and his team for so many years. And we really do appreciate that, Paul. And thank you. And thank you from Nick for your support that you've given us. To Aggie and Jade for their, I'm sure you'll agree, was a very informative presentation on our RMBI home, Prince Edward, Duke of Kent Court at Stystead. Thank you to Ray and Paul for their presentations too. I must thank Chris for his IT skills and making sure that the whole presentation has stayed up and running, and I can make him available for a very reasonable donation if you need him. And my final thanks just have to go to you all for joining and making it worthwhile for us to deliver our messages to you. Please just remember that while our meetings have not been, while we've not been at meetings, your work has continued throughout these troubled times. And it just highlights the uniqueness of your role as a Lodge Almoner. And I hope you've gained immense satisfaction in doing your work that your lodges and chapters recognise. Brethren and ladies, thank you all for your attendance, and we look forward to communicating with you in the very near future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Gary, I'll just conclude. There will be an information pack with the survey coming out probably in the next 72 hours or so. I've made a note of some things that people have asked for in the chat room. So from that point of view, that will be included. And I know that Aggie and Jay, are going to put a flyer together for us, which we'll include in that when we receive it. So thank you all for your help. Thank you all for your assistance from the team, and have a good afternoon.